off this list in our number 10 spot we have the Crying Children paintings. These paintings were a series created by an Italian painter who is known as Giovanni Bragolin, but his real name was Bruno Amarillo. Bruno was born in Venice in 1911 and fought in World War II, which ended up being the inspiration for a lot of his paintings. During his time in the war, he saw a lot of suffering children, and this is where he got the idea for the series of Crying Children paintings. After the paintings were sold, there began to be reports of fires in all of the places where the paintings were held. While this could have just been a strange coincidence, the weirdest part is that the paintings always remained intact while everything else around them was burned. This quickly became the most talked about thing and was on the front of every newspaper, and the paintings quickly gained the nickname Diablo. It caused these paintings to end up being replicated and mass produced, but none of the replicas hold quite the same power as the originals. In our number 9 spot today we have the Blarney Stone. For hundreds of years the Blarney Stone has resided within Blarney Castle, which is near Cork, Ireland. The stone is a piece of limestone, and legend says that those who give the stone a smooch will then be given the gift of the gab. This little smooch can bestow the power of being able to talk your way out of any situation, which would be incredibly useful, but there are always those who try to indulge in too much of a good thing. The issues start when you attempt to take a piece of the stone, no matter how small, away from its home. Those who don't follow the rules and take the stone end up being cursed with bad luck. Every year the castle receives parcels from greedy tourists who tried their luck at stealing portions of the stone. These parcels are returned with the intention of lifting the curse of misfortune. It is said that once the stone is returned, the curse will be lifted, which is most definitely good news. I guess the moral of this curse, however, is to not be greedy and to just follow the rules. In our number 8 spot today we have the Screaming Skull. The Screaming Skull resides in the Burton Agnes Hall in England, and it is thought to have belonged to Catherine Anne Griffith. It is said that Catherine was the youngest in the family, and she was the one who enjoyed wandering around the property the most. One day while she was out strolling around, she ended up being surrounded by a group of robbers who took all of her possessions and then viciously harmed her and left her for dead. She was found and brought back to the hall to be tended to, but unfortunately a few days later she succumbed to her injuries. Before she died, she was upset about the thought of leaving her family, so she asked them to remove her head after death and keep her skull so that they would always have a piece of her around. The family agreed to her face, but after her passing they buried her body, head still intact, because to be fair, it was an odd request. After her burial, the family began experiencing some extremely strange things around the house, like bumps and moans and horrible blood-curdling screams that they could not find the source of. This is when they decided to follow through with the request Catherine had left them, and the strange occurrences suddenly stopped. After this, at one point a maid had found the skull, and in her surprise, she threw it out of a nearby open window, and alas, the strange occurrences began again. In the end, it was decided that the best policy was to place the skull in a secret spot within the walls of the house, probably behind some paneling in the Great Hall so that its presence could be easily ignored, and so that Catherine's spirit could reside in peace in her beloved home. I guess the lesson of this one is to follow the wishes of those who have passed, because you never know if their spirit is gonna stay lingering around afterwards. In our number 7 spot today we have the Haunted Doll. There's quite a few haunted dolls kicking around out there apparently, but this one doesn't exactly have a name. The doll's owners say that this doll is possessed and causes lots of troubles at night. The incredibly creepy thing about this one is that it is said that you don't need to do anything in order for this doll to decide it wants to haunt you. You just simply need to be around it, and that is more than enough for the torment to start. Owners of the doll have reported getting a bunch of strange scratches, which they believe are because of the doll. It isn't exactly clear where the spirit or spirits that reside in this doll have come from or what happened, but the doll was bought from its previous owners by a woman named Deborah Davies, who is a psychic. Deborah reported the same scratches as the previous owners, but she also may have been able to contact the spirit residing in the doll. She claimed that the spirit was that of a young girl who had her life taken from her, but she also reported that the nasty evil energy within the doll is a male, and she believes that this energy is that of the man who took the life of the girl. At the end of the day, whatever is haunting this doll is certainly a spirit I would like to stay far, far away from. In our number 6 spot today we have the ballista balls. A ballista was used in the Roman military, and it was kind of similar to a crossbow, but much larger, and it could shoot arrows or stones. In 1989, there were archaeologists that were working by the Israeli-Syrian border when they found these large stones close to what seemed to be the remains of a ballista, but around 1995 the stones ended up getting stolen, and it took a while for anyone to notice. Fast forward to 2015 and the same stones that were stolen ended up in the courtyard of a museum museum in Israel with a note left from the person who stole them. The note explained that ever since they took them, he had experienced terrible luck and believed the stones were the reason. He had a very successful business that suddenly began to fail after he took the stones, and later his family abandoned him and he was forced to get rid of almost all of his possessions to settle all of his debts so as to not go bankrupt. He mentioned that he believed the stones were cursed and that they were the root of all of his problems. Whether or not these stones are actually cursed or if this was just some pretty heavy karma, I hope this guy has been able to get his life back on track. In our number 5 spot today we have the Golden Eagle. This car was a 1964 Dodge 330 limited edition and it has been blamed for the death of around 14 people, which is 14 too many if you ask me. It was said that this car started out as a police car originally, but then there were 3 officers assigned to this car who all ended up taking their lives and other people's lives in horribly violent ways. Not in the car, but still, super weird that this all seemed to happen after they had been using the car for work. Because of this strange correlation, it ended up being sold off to another man. Throughout the 80s and 90s, it was said that because of the rumored cursed car, it became a point of interest for vandals. People began vandalizing the car only to meet their own untimely fates, which were all met in strange ways. For example, it was said that one vandal died from being struck by lightning, and another ended up being decapitated by an 18-wheeler. It is said that the curse is so strong that one kid decided to merely touch the car and it sent him into madness, as he went on to commit atrocious crimes that I can't even detail here on YouTube. The car now belongs to Wendy Allen, who supposedly collects and decorates haunted cars for a living, so it seems as though it's finally found its home far, far, far away from everyone else. In our number 4 spot today we have the Myrtles Plantation Mirror. Myrtles Plantation is located in St. Francisville, Louisiana, and it is said to be one of the most haunted places in the entire world. One of the reasons for this spooky reputation is because of a mirror that resides inside. It is said that this mirror holds the spirit of Sarah Woodruff and her 2 children. Legend goes that a woman named Chloe was a slave at the plantation who drew up a plan to get revenge on the owners of the plantation, Sarah and her husband. Chloe baked a cake full of poison for them, but it ended up only being Sarah and 2 of her children who consumed the poisonous cake. When they passed away, it is said that their spirits went into the only mirror that was uncovered at the time, thus the haunted mirror was born. People who have since visited the plantation have claimed to see the family in the reflection as well as the handprints of small children on the glass despite continuous polishing. In our number 3 spot today we have the Surrey ghost car. On December 11th of 2002, a call came into the Surrey Police Department. The caller reported that they had just seen a car lose control and run off the road and then presumably crash. It was of course an emergency call, but not necessarily anything out of the ordinary. That was until authorities got to the location and realized that they couldn't find any kind of evidence of a crash. They kept searching and ended up finding a maroon colored car that was nose down in a ditch nearby, but this car was covered in so much undergrowth that it must have been here for months. This meant that somehow this crash went undetected for 5 months, and worst of all, so did the body that lay nearby. Using dental records, they were able to identify the body as a man who had been wanted for robbery since July of that year. It is said that the sighting of the car leaving the road was a ghostly replay of the events that had taken place 5 months prior. What do you guys think? Let me know down below in the comments if you think the witness saw a cursed reenactment of the fatal crash, or if you think something else is at play here. In our number 2 spot today we have the Destiny Ring. Rudolph Valentino was an incredibly famous silent film star before he passed away at the incredibly young age of just 31 years old, and there are many out there who believe his untimely death was caused by the Destiny Ring. This ring was one that he picked up from a California jeweler. Before purchasing it, there were warnings of the stories which claimed this ring was cursed, but Rudolph decided to go ahead with the purchase anyway. It is said that after this ring came into his possession, his luck began to turn. The movies he starred in started to do poorly, some even flopping, and his career began to struggle. From there he fell incredibly ill, and when he passed away he was wearing this cursed ring. From there, after his death, his lover ended up receiving the ring, but once it was in her possession she too fell extremely ill and decided to give the ring away. All the owners after that were reported to have died in strange ways or under mysterious circumstances, which has led the ring to now being placed in a bank vault, all locked up so that it hopefully can never cause harm to anyone ever again. In our number 1 spot today we have Letta the doll. Why do all the cursed dolls look like they would be cursed? You know what I mean? Like, there's no cursed doll out there that is surprisingly cursed. They all look creepy to begin with. Anyway, Letta is a doll that is said to be around 200 years old and extremely cursed. This doll is called Letta for short, as its full name is Letta Me Out of Here. Really clever. The doll was originally found underneath a house, which definitely feels like the origin story of a haunted doll. This creepy discovery came 47 years ago, and apparently Letta still lives with the man who found him. The hauntings of Letta include things like the doll walking around on its own at night, the owners finding objects around the house that have been moved into odd places, some people have seen Letta move right in front of their own eyes, and the owner also reports finding little doll-sized scuff marks around the house as well. It is said that this doll once belonged to a child who passed away while holding it, thus their spirit became trapped inside of the doll. Apparently one day in an interview about Letta, as the interviewer was asking questions about the little boy, the doll began to move in her lap. Yeah, no thank you. Letta has his own Instagram and Facebook page in case you want to hear more about all the creepiness surrounding this cursed doll.
Starting off this countdown, we have the deck of cards. Now, I don't know about you, but a normal deck of cards don't have number 1 cards. In place, they have aces. But would you look at that? This odd deck had ones, which makes me very uncomfortable. I don't know about you, but I've never seen this before. If we're playing Go Fish and you whip out a 1, I'm leaving, I'm sorry. Jokes aside, we have decks with aces because they can serve as the highest card or lowest. So it can serve as a 1 or more than 1. That's why we don't have ones, according to Google, don't quote me. So I don't know where this person got their cards from, but it just seems wrong. In our 9th spot today, we have the knockoffs. Sometimes brand name pieces can be expensive and we want the same or similar item but cheaper. That's where knockoff brands come into play. Take a look at these cereals. They're so similar, yet so different. So we got Cocoa Rice instead of Cocoa Puffs, we got Honey Nut Crispy Oats instead of Honey Nut Cheerios, Fruit Rounds instead of Fruit Loops, Marshmallows and Stars instead of Lucky Charms, Cookies instead of Cookie Crisp, and lastly, Kids Crunch instead of Captain Crunch. Now if I saw an aisle filled with those, I think I was transported to another universe. In our 8th spot today, we have the map. Now let's get to a serious one. In 1929, a group of historians discovered something pretty strange. It was a map from 1513 written on the skin of a gazelle. It was created by a well-known admiral of the Turkish Navy. Well, what's odd is that the map included Europe and North Africa, the coast of Brazil, several islands, and even Antarctica, which was not discovered until 300 years later. Not only that, but it was said that Antarctica was not covered in ice. The last time that occurred was more than 6,000 years ago. So this whole thing just doesn't make any sense. How did this man map a continent that's been covered by ice for the last 6,000 years? Maybe he's from a parallel universe, or maybe the map is. In our 7th spot today, we have the stop sign. Again, another item that just makes me uncomfortable. Someone decided to create a lowercase stop sign, and it looks like it's like stop, no, just stop. Like it's too gentle. As a wise movie once said, no, stick to the stuff you know. It's better by far to keep things as they are. Don't mess with the flow. Stick to the status quo. If you know what movie that's from, I automatically love you. But maybe this person was driving around in another universe. Who knows? In our 6th spot today, we have the Oumuamua artifact. Hopefully I pronounced that right, because in another video I didn't, so now I'm changing the pronunciation. Let me know if I get it right, just be gentle, folks. In 2017, this object was found flying by in our solar system. Now it's quite weird. It looks like a space rock, but it's not a comet or asteroid. It's too small and oddly shaped to be an asteroid. This thing is long. In fact, this is now the most elongated known space object. Not only that, but astronomers were shocked by the condition of it. Astronomers thought that the first space rock to enter our solar system would be a ball of ice and rocks like a comet. But this isn't one. Now, not only is it not shaped like one, but there's usually a cloud of dust and gas surrounding comets, and this object just doesn't have that. But before scientists could study it too much, it left our solar system. All we know is that the strange object came from another solar system. Or maybe a different universe, and that's why it's so weird and unlike anything we've ever seen before. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the ARCHLESS McDonald's. Imagine this, okay? You're hungry, you're driving down a road, madly looking for places to stop and eat, and that's when you see it. Off in the distance, you see 2 golden arches, and you know exactly what awaits you. The one and only McDonald's. Except whatever universe this is in, McDonald's only has one arch. Like hello, it's not Nick Donald's, it's Mick. So stop, okay? Or maybe someone messed up with the designing this restaurant, I don't know. Also, since when does McDonald's sell just bags of ice? Like look at the sign, bag of ice, $1. I mean it's a steal nonetheless, but still, that's odd on its own as well. In our fourth spot today we have the ULFBERHT sword. Now this is something scientists like to call an out of place object. And that's because the sword dates back from around 800 to 1000 AD. Which is shocking since they didn't have technology to make such swords back then. Swords like this were made 800 years later during the Industrial Revolution. Not only that, but its carbon content is 3 times higher than other swords of its time. It also suggested that in order to make this sword, iron ore had to have been heated to at least 3000 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? Again, they didn't have that technology to do that back then. So many people are perplexed. Well, there are a bunch of theories. One is that it was dropped by a time traveler, or 2, it might have come from a parallel universe. One that is far more advanced than ours. But let me know your theory in the comments below. In our third spot today we have Lost and Found. A number of people on Reddit have shared stories in which they have lost something only for it to reappear in a place where it's impossible to. So let me explain. So one man said that he was with his cousin at Home Depot. Before they went in, the cousin grabbed his wallet, but he didn't have any pockets, so he asked the narrator if he could put his wallet inside his pocket so that he didn't have to carry it around. He agreed and he zipped it into his track pants. After shopping around at Home Depot for a bit, they went to check out, but his wallet wasn't in the track pants. So they retraced their steps thinking maybe it fell out, but nothing. So they decided just to go back to the car and return to the store later. When they got to the car, lo and behold, the wallet was on the dashboard. Which is wild because the cousin literally handed him the wallet and he zipped it into his pants. Now, one person believes that what happened was the universe glitched, and maybe in another reality, the man just left his wallet on the dashboard. Somehow, those universes merged, hence why the wallet was on the dash. Now, it's all confusing how this stuff works, but that's me explaining it the most basic way possible. In our second spot, we have the little dino looking figures. In 1944, thousands of little dino looking figures were dug up in Mexico. Only problem is that the pieces date back to 2500 BCE, a time when no dinosaurs were roaming around and people couldn't have possibly known about dinosaurs then. This is all according to scientists. So were there some other creatures that roamed the earth back then that we don't know of? Or is there a time traveling paleontologist out there? Imagine that, like Ross from Friends also being a time traveler. I love that. I don't know, or the object is from another universe. And in our number 1 spot today we have the ring. Now this next individual has a similar story to the Home Depot boys. So for her, she was washing the dishes one day when she heard a clink in her sink. Her ring that she took off when she was doing the dishes had slipped and fell into the sink and down the drain. Now, it was just a cheap one, so she wasn't too concerned. It wasn't like her wedding ring. So she decided to just go on about her day. In the end, she forgot that the ring was even there. That was until a week later when she was putting on her shoes and felt something poking her toe. She emptied out her shoe and her ring clanked to the floor. So somehow, the ring went from being in her sink drain to in her shoe. Someone explain that to me. I don't know, maybe house elves are real.
Number 10. The BUSBY STOOP chair. Yeah, we're kicking this haunted list off with a chair. It's pretty spooky. Let's do it. The BUSBY STOOP chair comes from 1702, 10 years after the Salem witch trials, so take this one with a grain of salt. You know what I mean? People made odd choices back then. Women were witches and chairs were evil. Welcome to 1702, folks. Englishman Thomas Bubsy had some issues with his father-in-law, and he didn't handle them too well, so now he has to be, hanged for it. Yeah, you can't just kill people for no reason, Thomas. What is this, 1692? He was hanged near the Humble Inn, ironic, but a chair that was nearby is now said to hold the spirit of one Thomas Busby. If you sit on this chair, you are set to die in a frightful accident. So the chair was declared haunted, but did anything actually happen? Honestly, yeah, kind of. Locals say that during World War II, airmen from a nearby base came to the pub, the inn rather, and those who sat on it never returned. In the 70s, more accidents were connected, but they still kept the chair around until 1978. It stayed in the inn for that long, until it was donated to the Thirsk Museum. Honestly, it's not even a rocking chair. It looks looks like it should be a rocking chair, but it's not a rocking chair. That's the scariest part if you ask me. Number 9. The hands resist him. I listed off some dark paintings not too long ago, but somehow I forgot the hands resisting him. Painter Bill Stoneham created this work of art back in 1972. It's most famously belonged to actor John Marley from The Godfather. He's the guy who wakes up with the horse's head in his bed, in case you have seen that movie. So that actor got this painting at one point, but later it was found on eBay with claims that it was cursed from an anonymous previous seller. And the painting was found abandoned in an alley behind a brewery, so that sounds pretty promising. Almost immediately, the new owner of the painting, the family, their daughter claimed to have seen people in the painting move. Yeah, on top of that, apparently the figures would leave the painting and mess up the house. I mean, as far as excuses go, that's not bad for a messy house. Oh, I cleaned up earlier, but those damn paintings. Oh. Number 8, cursed phone number. The song 8675309 has been stuck in my head for about 18 years now. That song is a banger. Honestly, great jingle too. If a pizza place had thought of that jingle at first, would have been game over if you ask me. A cursed phone number, is there such a thing? Apparently, yes. 359-888, and then a bunch of 8s afterwards. I don't want to say it out loud, you know? So what's the deal here? Well, anybody who's had this phone number in the last 20 years or so has met their fate almost immediately after. CEO of a Bulgarian phone company, cancer at 48, that's how he passed away. 2 criminals later on, both a little more mysterious than cancer, they both passed away afterwards. All these deaths happened within 4 years. That's the cursed aspect of it all. The phone number was suspended, so nobody's able to use it now. In case you're thinking about it, don't do it. Maybe it's because of this curse, or maybe it has ties to crime. Either way, 8675309 is still stuck in my head. I'm gonna go down with that song right as soon as we're done here. Number 7, the Bassano vase. This vase comes from the 15th century. It made for an excellent wedding gift in Italy, but the night before the big day, the bride sadly lost her life with the vase still in her hands. The family kept it afterwards, of course, but as the vase was passed down the family line, a pattern began to unveil itself. Whomever held possession of the Bassano vase died shortly afterwards. Now, keep in mind, this was the 15th century, so the average lifespan around then was like, I don't know, 30 years old. But after that many deaths in the family, it was packed away for good, just to be safe, or so they thought. The vase showed up again in 1988 alongside a note. The note was pretty to the point. It said, "Beware this vase, it brings death." Whoever found it was probably like, okay. They continued on with the vase, and later it was auctioned for over $2,000, sans note, of course, you don't want to throw that in there. The pharmacist who won the auction, you guessed it, passed away within months. Number 6, Baker's wedding dress. Why is it in so many horror movies that the ghost is always a lady in a white dress? Why are there so many ghosts in nightgowns? What's going on? Why are you all so sleepy? Maybe they're taken out before their wedding night over a vase, or maybe it's this one. Back in 1849 in the small town of Altoona, Pennsylvania, Elias Baker and his wife Hetty lived in the Baker mansion. They had 2 sons and 1 daughter named Anna. Anna had fallen in love with one of her father's employees, another steel worker, but after her father wouldn't allow the relationship to take off, classic, Anna vowed to never marry anybody, and she locked herself away in her room. Now, when her father passed away in 1848, she went to go find her true love again, but he had since settled down with somebody else. So she spent the rest of her days behaving erratically, and her soul still haunts that same wedding dress today, the wedding dress she never ended up using. Not just the dress, the mansion is haunted as well. Guests would report furniture moving around by itself. Honestly, it's not a bad haunting if you ask me. Moving couches? That would be a great help. I have a terrible back. I would love that. Number 5, the Crying Boy painting. Just the name alone. Okay, I want nothing to do with this one. Yeah, we're back with another haunted painting. What is this, Hogwarts? Why are so many paintings moving around at night? This English curse kicked off in the 50s. Now, this is a reproduction of Bruno Amadio's The Crying Boy painting, but this painting is apparently responsible for lots of fires. In September 1985, a family's home burnt down, everything was gone, but the painting looked untouched. British tabloid The Sun even published a story on it, which I'm sure helped the situation. It read, "Blazing curse of the Crying Boy picture." Now, we laugh at beliefs from the Middle Ages and all that, but we're not really much further here, are we? People smoking in every house in the 50s were like, yeah, maybe it was a painting. It was probably that. Number 4, the Hope Diamond. Coming from the 1660s, this curse began when a gem dealer named Jean-Baptiste Tavernier bought this large diamond when visiting India. He bought it, apparently, okay. The origins of the diamond were unknown, but it didn't matter. This beauty was just sitting there and he had to. Well, later on, after Tavernier got the diamond, rumors spread throughout Europe and the United States that Tavernier actually stole the diamond from the statue of a Hindu goddess. The newspapers actually kicked this one off by publishing the Hope Diamond as an ancient curse. The diamond at one point ended up in the hands of King Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette. Now, if you don't know about them in history, theory, they lost their lives during the French Revolution. We'll say that. The old guillotine dream team. The stone then went to Lord Francis Hope come 1839, and by that point it was deemed cursed officially. This is when it got the name, the Hope Diamond, right? They ended up selling the diamond shortly after being reduced to poverty. Then Evelyn Walsh McLean bought the stone in 1912. Shortly after, her son was killed in a car accident. So just bad news all around. When the stone was delivered to its final and current home, the Smithsonian, back in 1958, the driver delivering the package was later hit by a truck. He survived, but shortly after, his house caught fire. Moral of the story, you don't need diamonds, for more reasons than one. Number 3, the Anguished Man. Historical paintings are cool, but this is the first time I've read up on the Anguished Man myself. Gotta admit, it's pretty unsettling. Wow. It's considered one of the most haunted objects in the world, and it looks like it too. Definitely I would guess I'd pick it out of the crowd. This oil painting was created by an unknown artist, but the actual paint is mixed with their blood. So their legit DNA is in this painting. Blood, sweat, and tears, literally. Not much is known of the artist as he passed away shortly after, but the current owner is Sean Robinson from Cumbria, England. His grandmother had given him the painting. There wasn't much known beforehand, but his grandmother warned him that it was cursed. Hey, here's some Werther's originals and a cursed painting. Classic grandmas, you know how they do. Sean had to leave it in his basement at first because his wife wasn't a fan. More than fair. But when the basement flooded, which is also mysterious and that sucks, he had to then move it upstairs. After that point, the couple heard crying, screams, whispering all throughout the house, things you don't want to hear alone in a house with a haunted painting. It got so bad, Robinson uploaded time-lapse footage to YouTube in 2011, and it shows the door closing by itself next to the painting. Check it out. Also, yeah, keep this in the basement for sure. I agree with the missus on this one. Number 2, broken mirrors. It doesn't matter who you are, you've heard of this one at some point. You break a mirror and what do you get? Bad luck. You get 7 years of bad luck. Has this happened to you? If so, what year are you on? Are you close? How close are you to the 7-year mark? We got your back. You got this. You're so close. Ancient Romans kicked this one off. They believed that the human soul would renew every 7 years. That's where the whole 7-year thing comes into play. It takes time to repair the human soul, apparently. That combined with the belief that a mirror's reflection was a way into the soul, well, now we have one guy who feels really bad for breaking a mirror, essentially. Therefore, a curse. If you break a mirror, you're tearing the soul from the body and abandoning it. In Kazakhstan, if you break a mirror, evil spirits would haunt the person responsible for the damage. That's a pretty scary deal. You gotta keep those hands grippy. They say you can't look into broken mirror pieces afterwards, or else that's bad luck in itself. There's too many mirrors now, honestly, cut to today. I'm sure ancient Romans had no idea what 2022 would look like. We have phone cases with mirrors in them now. That's a lot of bad luck in jean pockets, my friends. And coming in number 1, curse of the Billy Goat. Can a team be cursed? Is that such a thing? Here we go. I mean, I live in Toronto, home of the Maple Leafs, and we don't see a lot of wins on that side, but the Chicago Cubs curse, well, that was a huge deal for a very long time. The Chicago Cubs curse comes from 1945, when a man named Bill Sionis, nicknamed Billy Goat, he was kicked out of a Chicago Cubs game. Yeah, he actually didn't even get into game 4 to begin with. Was he too intoxicated? No. Did he bring a live goat with him to this game? Yes, that was why. Yeah, Bill brought with him his pet goat for good luck, so after the staff said, no, you can't enter the 1945 World Series with a live goat, he then cursed the club over and over on the way out. What a guy. Saying the Cubs ain't gonna win no more, over and over again, and that was the game that they dropped the ball, so something kind of happened. The Detroit Tigers won and the curse of the Billy Goat kicked off, and it got so out of hand that come 1994, the Cubs had lost 12 games in a row, their worst home start in history, so Sam Sionis went to Wrigley Field, everybody was chanting to let the goat in, and then the Cubs won 5-2. I don't know. Humans in the 1700s were like, ah, that woman's cursed, she's a witch for sure, and then humans today are like, ah, that stadium's cursed, for sure cursed. We haven't changed, moral of the story, I don't know.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Anna Baker's wedding dress. In 1836, a man named Elias Baker purchased a mansion in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and moved his small family in. Elias's oldest daughter was named Anna, and when she fell in love with a steel worker, things took a very dark turn. Anna's father didn't want her dating this man, but she kept doing it in secret. The story goes that Anna and the man planned a secret wedding and they were going to elope. Unfortunately, Elias found out and freaked out. He apparently purchased the steel mill that this man worked for and then forced him to have to move to an entirely different city so as to prevent him from being able to continue seeing Anna. Anna, of course, was furious with her father, and I'm sure this was only made worse by his decision to offer other men to her, to which she of course declined because that's just weird. Anna instead locked herself in her room with her wedding dress that she she never got to wear. Anna unfortunately never married after that and spent the rest of her life being terribly upset about the whole incident. After her death, it is said that her anger and despair ended up going into the wedding dress. Members of the Baker family reported seeing the dress in different places around the house despite no one moving it themselves. Some have even reported seeing Anna's spirit dressed in the gown around the house as well. In our number 9 spot today we have The Hands Resist Him. The Hands Resist Him is a painting created by artist Bill Stoneham, and it is supposed to represent the doorway that connects our world with the world of the spirits. The doorway to the other side. This is extra suspicious considering owners of the painting have claimed that they have seen the characters in the painting move, or sometimes even disappear at night. The painting is said to depict Bill as a child looking quite sad with a doll with creepy hollow eyes. In the background you can see mysterious hands reaching out towards the boy. The creepiness of the painting is only elevated when we hear the stories of the reported 3 people who passed away after coming into contact with the painting. It ended up kind of disappearing for around 15 years until it popped back up on eBay. Even then, the seller warned potential buyers that the painting was haunted and claimed that the boy in the painting would come out of it and scare their child. The painting ended up being sold for $1,025 to a buyer in Michigan, and at this point it's unclear if they've had any troubles with the rumored hauntings and curses. In our number 8 spot today we have the cursed phone number. I didn't know a phone number could be cursed, but apparently it's true, and I know a phone number technically isn't an object, but I still feel like this had to be included today because it's just too crazy to not. There was a Bulgarian phone number that is said to have been in use for 10 years before it was closed. The reason why it ended up being closed and put out of use is because it is rumored to have belonged to 3 separate people who all died of mysterious circumstances after having been assigned the phone number. Apparently all of the deaths took place shortly after the person had been assigned the number, and they were all seemingly a bit suspicious, thus the rumors of the cursed telephone number began to spread. After this, the company made the decision to suspend the phone number, and they didn't give out details as to why. I wonder if the two are related. In our number 7 spot today we have the Belcourt Castle chairs. Belcourt Castle is located in Newport, Rhode Island, and it is a former summer cottage. Construction on the cottage started in 1891, with it being completed in 1894, and inside there is a ballroom. The ballroom is important because it is said that it holds a group of haunted chairs. People who have visited the castle have reported a ton of strange happenings regarding this specific set of chairs. The reports include things like feeling chills racing up and down their spines, or feeling a strange sensation in a shift of energy while standing near the chairs, and some people have even explained how they have been pushed out of the chairs by an invisible force. I feel like just hearing stories might be enough to explain the energy shift some people are feeling, but actually being pushed out of a chair by some sort of invisible force would be absolutely terrifying. In our number 6 spot today we have the Anguished Man. While it is unknown who or when it was created, this painting is said to carry some kind of a curse. It is rumored that whoever created it mixed his blood with the oil paint, and when he finished creating it, he ended up taking his own life. When a woman who is referred to as Mrs. Robinson originally took possession of the painting after it was given to her by a family friend, she immediately knew that something was wrong with it. She ended up passing it along to her grandson Sean, who currently still owns the painting. When Sean hung the painting up, they apparently started experiencing paranormal events. The Robinson family has reported many different strange events that have happened in relation to the painting, such as hearing screams and groans coming from it, as well as hearing doors creaking when no one is around them, and being awoken in the middle of the night by blood-curdling screams that they can't find the source of. Sean has even uploaded videos to YouTube where he shows these paranormal events, and it has been reported that the family now keeps the painting hidden away in the basement, which is probably for the best. In our number 5 spot today we have the Dark Mirror. This mirror now resides within the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and Occult, and just that alone is enough to know it deserves a spot on today's list. The museum received this mirror from the owner who had purchased it from a psychic fair. It is believed that this mirror was created sometime around the 1820s or 30s, and it is actually quite beautiful to look at despite the sinister things it seems to hold. The owner who gave it to the museum explained that every time they peered into the mirror, they saw these extremely upsetting things while looking into the dark mirror's reflection. The museum has said that since they added the mirror to their collection, there have been guests who have also reported the same kind of things. Guests have claimed to see things reflected back at them like sightings of their own corpse. In our number 4 spot today we have Old Nick. Nick. Old Nick is often referred to as the Swansea Devil, and his story dates back to the 1890s, although he now resides in the Swansea Museum. So, back in the 1890s, there was the prestigious St. Mary's Church located right in the center of town. The church decided to do some renovations and they put out some ads to hire someone. When a local builder applied for the job and was turned down, he had a major overreaction and decided he wanted to get some kind of revenge. He went and bought the row of cottages that lay next to the church and then demolished them all. In their place, he built large brick offices and then commissioned the carving of Old Nick and placed him right on top of the office building, looking down at St. Mary's Church. Legend goes that he even placed the curse himself by saying, quote, "When your church is destroyed and burnt to the ground, my devil will remain laughing," end quote. Some years later, during World War II, a German blitz came through the town and it left most of it, including St. Mary's, completely destroyed and burnt to the ground. But the office building with Old Nick was undamaged and remained standing. For a while, Old Nick seemed to kind of disappear, but once he resurfaced, there was a petition to put him back to where he was before, as well as a subsequent counter petition to put him far, far away from the rebuilt St. Mary's Church. As of now, Old Nick resides behind glass in the Swansea Museum, and it is said that he is enclosed in glass more for our protection rather than his. In our number 3 spot today, we have the cursed portrait. Bernardo de Galvez was born in Spain in 1746, and he went on to become a military leader. He became well known for helping American colonies during the War of Independence before he apparently passed away under mysterious circumstances in 1786. There is a portrait of Bernardo that resides in the Galvez Hotel in Galveston, Texas, which is said to be one of the most haunted hotels in the world, and that makes sense because this portrait is said to be one of the cursed objects that gives the hotel its spooky title. The portrait is located at the end of a hallway in the hotel, and guests have reported the eyes following their every move. People also report a cold or uncomfortable feeling when they get close to the painting, and this is said to be Bernardo's spirit. Some people even swear they can feel him following them around the hotel. It is also said that any picture you try to take of the portrait will come out blurry and distorted unless you ask Bernardo for permission first. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Koh-i-Noor diamond. This diamond has an extremely controversial history and is the source of a lot of debate, but regardless of the ongoing conversations over who really owns it, we are here to talk about the curse that this stone is said to hold. This diamond dates back thousands of years, and its curse is said to only affect men. It is said that the jewel can bring about great wealth, but it can also bring great misfortune as well to those who own it. Folklore states that he who owns this diamond will own the world, but will also know all of its misfortunes. Only God or women can wear it with impunity. Throughout the history of the diamond, it was passed among many people and rulers who all fought bloody battles while in possession of it. Every prince who had it is said to have ultimately lost either their power or their life while in possession of it as well. Part of the controversy of the diamond is how it ended up in the hands of the British royal family during colonization in the 1800s. Ever since then, it has only been worn by female monarchs, including Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth. In our number 1 spot today, we have James Dean's car. Okay, this one might seem like a bit of a wild card, but hear me out. Famous actor James Dean passed away from a car accident on September 30th, 1955. At the time, he was driving his silver Porsche 550 Spyder, which he had just recently purchased. This was only the beginning of the car's curse, however, as after James' passing, the remnants of the totaled car were bought by a man named George Barris. He decided to sell parts of the car to James' fans, but when the car was being worked on and taken apart, it ended up falling on a mechanic and it crushed him to death. These two incidents are more than enough to now consider the car cursed, but it still continues on. Once the people who had purchased some of the car parts began receiving them, more strange things happened. 3 of the people who received parts ended up in car accidents, all of which were sadly quite severe. The shell of the car was also stolen, and to this day, it has never been recovered.